This is Pete Moore. I am here on Halo Talks NYC on location, San Diego, Ursa 2018. I'm here with Robert Creech from Memphis, Tennessee. I've spent some time in the South. I went to Emory University. You've been an entrepreneur from the start.
I have.
One of our people with a lot of knowledge of the industry from the beginning, taking a lot of interesting travels and turns along the way to come up with the model that you feel is the winning model. So I want to first welcome you on the show and then talk about your background and then talk about the club chain you have down in Memphis.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me. And so you know a little bit about the South, so you know about the sticky weather that we have. But yeah, let me just give you a little bit of my background. I've been at this 20 years now. I got into it 2 years out of college on accident. And I was an athlete like a lot of us that get into this industry. We were ex-athletes. We were always involved in working out. And I was actually sitting on a workout floor when I was 22, and the owner of the gym that I was working out at, with 5-6 minute conversation, he really told me everything about his gym. And like a lot of us are people who belong to our gyms, they see our parking lots full and they think that we're making a lot of money. And I was that kid at the time, and I went to my father and said, "Dad, I think I have an idea. I want to build a gym." And he was in the grocery industry, and he looked at me like I was crazy. And he basically just shooed me away and said, "Hey, go look into that, son." And so I did, and that's really how I got started. I mean, really by accident, by talking to the owner of that gym. And I opened my first gym at 24. And here I am at 43 years old, almost 20 years later, still at it.
So you're at DeSoto Athletic Club?
Yeah, DeSoto Athletic Clubs, yes. So I have 2 locations currently. I've had up to 6, but I have 2 locations currently. Our first location that we still have is located in South Haven, Mississippi, which is just south of Memphis, Tennessee. We consider it a suburb of Memphis. And then I have a location in Carterville, Tennessee, which is located about 25 miles outside of Memphis.
And what's the background on the name?
That's and I know you're going to ask this question. What was one of my mistakes? My biggest mistake that I made, and if I could go back and change anything, is the name. At the time where South Haven, Mississippi is located, it's called DeSoto County. And when we picked the real estate for where we built this location, it is in the center of that county. And it's more of a rural area, or it was at the time. It's no longer. So we knew that we were going to have to draw from the entire county to make this thing work.
Okay.
So we put DeSoto on it. But 20 years later, it's probably the biggest mistake that I made moving forward because of growth. So actually, we're embarking on a rebranding process right now to rebrand our facility so we can have a name that we can grow with moving forward. But yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's there's interesting lessons related to that, because there are some clubs that want to be embedded in the community, but then you've got constraints on what that community is.
Absolutely. And the thing that I tell people, nowadays, even our marketing firm, they have cautioned me against that. But you can't hide anymore from the nationals. They're everywhere. They're in our communities. They're everywhere. And I always talk to people about the Walmart effect. When you had the local hardware store that was in business for years and years and years, Walmart comes in and wipes them out. And that's what you're seeing to a lot of independents, such as myself, with the big nationals coming in. People are brand conscious. And so, yes, I do agree that the small town communities, they love having the community feel, but they're also tied to a national brand as well.
Gotcha. So from a standpoint of, looking at your current company and then saying, you're going to rebrand, there's got to be, part of it's got to the sense of anxiety related to like, all right, I'm going to take the name down.
Correct.
But also part of it, it's got to feel like an opportunity, almost like a grand reopening.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, being in business as long as we have been over a 20-year period, I mean, obviously we have a lot of brand equity within in the communities that we serve. But at the same time, it's almost like a rebirth as well, and it's been a fun process. And I think it's one that our staff will get behind, as well as our membership. And there's a story behind that. I mean, there's a story with our business and the evolution of it. And that's what we're really going to tell in the rebranding process.
Gotcha. So, as you've gone through the process and seen some of these new competitors come into town.
Correct.
Somewhat of this Walmart effect that you talk about. How did you think about making the right decision to say, okay, look, I'm going to hunker down on 2 assets that are strong, that have competitive advantage, well positioned, just because there's plenty of people that go through this process, and they might be more corporations that say, look, I'm going to get rid of 20 stores, and like they make the decision in the boardroom, they execute on it, and that's the decision. You see it all the time with big box retailers in the health club industry, and we've made some investments and we've had to make some hard decisions. But once you make that decision, it's the right decision, but it's hard. It's emotional in this industry. So maybe talk about to some of our listeners who might say like, hey, I'm thinking about trying to turn this thing around, or I'm trying to, depend on where my resources are. So talk about that for a minute.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I've been asked that many times, because what we did in 2014, so 4 years ago, we blew our business up. We blew the business model up. And a lot of that was predicated by what was happening in the marketplace. We were a little more reactive than proactive. And so what we really did is we looked at what was working in terms of what we thought was going to be there and going to stay. We looked at a lot of the fads, which company that has entered the market that we think that's not going to stay. So one of the first things that we did, we lowered our price point, and then we built a model from there. We layered up. So instead of a one-size-fits-all, which is what a lot of us traditionally did, what we did is we have a 3-tiered pricing model, and we basically put the onus on the customer. Hey, whatever you want is what you pay for. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we allow them to mix and match. So again, if a husband comes in and he wants just to work out, then he has a price point for that. If the wife wants group exercise or personal training, she has a price point for that, and then they can blend however they want. And it's worked really well, because nowadays the consumer wants to feel like they are in control versus us telling them what they're going to do. And that's the first thing that we did. The other thing that we did in terms of two of our obviously the biggest profit centers in the clubs is our personal training department. We did the same thing. We really looked at Apple's product curve. That's where that came from. And we talked about the iPod when it first came out. It was an expensive product. Mm-hmm. And then obviously they went to the Shuffle, the Nano, and now if you look at their product curve, they have anything from $49 up to $5,000. So basically one of the things that has been very successful for us is it's just a price point, and you play where your budget will allow you. And that's worked really well. And we've gained market share back from doing that. Gotcha.
So what are some of the best lessons they've learned over the last couple of years, as being an entrepreneur, and you've borrowed money, paid it back, you've grown, then you've contracted, now you're growing again.
Correct.
There's certain things you learn that are like the intangibles. Sure. And your brain just starts to get rewired in a way to understand business a different way. So maybe talk about a couple of takeaways that you've had that you feel are invaluable, that are not something you can read about.
Right. Well, the biggest thing for me is I had to become a better listener. Okay. And then based off listening, I had to react. The one thing that I can tell anybody in business, not reacting is not the answer. You're either moving forward or backwards. There is no neutral. So one of the things that I've taken away from some of those who I've whether they're industry friends that I have, or really where I've learned a lot was from outside the industry. I get outside the industry and I talk to people. I'm very fortunate to have a pretty good network of individuals around me from all different types of industries, and I really go to them and ask them the questions about their business and how they handle different scenarios. And then I've brought that back into my business and done the same thing with it. But again, the biggest thing is that I've learned that I can take away from what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years, or even during the recessionary period, is you cannot be still. You have to be moving, and you have to be willing to change. And if you're not willing to change, because our industry's ever evolving, then you're not going to be in it long.
Gotcha. So you've got some staff that have been with you, from the beginning?
I do. I have some key staff that have been with me from the beginning. Most importantly, my accountant has been with me from the beginning, thank goodness. But I've had a lot of staff that have been with me 13, 14 years. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing, Peter. I mean, it really can. And fortunately enough for me, I have some key staff that have been willing to change and evolve with me versus fighting. And that's helped us a lot too.
Gotcha. That's great. So, as you look at where you're positioned now, and the service offerings of some of the, low cost, high volume, the some of the branded chains, what's your niche? And you talked a little bit about the a la carte menu. Is it really about understanding what someone's needs are and posting up solutions? Is that how you think about it?
I think so. I think there's two things. First of all, it's really educating the marketplace to understanding that you can do that. Because again, even with, let's just say personal training services, for the layperson, they think that's very expensive. It's not. It doesn't have to be. For the layperson, he or she thinks that they have to pay, one price for a membership for something that they don't use. So what we've had to do, Peter, is a lot of awareness for the model change. And then once someone does get into the club, then what we have to do as a staff is place them where we best feel that they can get the optimal result. And I think in any of our businesses these days, whether it's the boutiques or mainstream fitness centers such as myself, it's all about a result now.
Yep.
It's all about a result. And if they're not getting it, they're going to go somewhere else. And that's what it's about.
Gotcha. Well, look forward to swinging through your clubs.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
At some point. And,
absolutely.
I think it's a great story, and, hunker down into what you're good at and then continue to grow at your own pace. And it seems like you're embedded in the community that you want to be in and you grew up in.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Good talking to you.